Hi, and welcome to Thete Gaming, and in this video I'm going to actually be discussing a game of Age of Sigmar had earlier this week in terms of considering one of the main massive changes to 3rd edition compared to 2nd edition and how it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Really, this is taking the place of what should have been a battle report, not more technical problems. We'll actually talk about that first. With doing the battle reports, they take a long time to edit, as we've been doing them. And we're talking about this actually on Tuesday when we had the game, which was I was playing a Nurgle-based Slaves to Darkness army against a Starborn-based Seraphon army. So I was thinking, oh god, I mean, I'm up against it here, up against it. As it happens, it was quite a tight game. It was a very good game, but it would have taken a hell of a long time to edit, and then I couldn't do it in the first place, in the end anyway, because for some reason. My best camera decided it was just bored partway through, so it stopped recording. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it a bit differently from next week, just as a trial, because it's not sustainable anyway, the amount of time I'm having to spend editing, and do summary-based battle reports. So at the end of a phase, rather than filming the play itself, filming what we've done, discuss that. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, this game, which is quite instructive in many ways, the way, obviously, the thing with Age of Sigmar that you can get caught out on, and the same would apply to 40k or anything like that, is you can have your army and you can go, oh, it's a battle game, and you can just crash into your enemy and crack lots of skulls and have a really good game, and then go, oh, I scored no points. I've lost by a lot when you actually tot up the points, because strategic game, you have to think about how do I get the points to win the game. The winning the game is not about the cracking of the skulls, it is about the getting of the points. And with Age of Sigmar, you had all these different battle plans, and they all had different ways of scoring victory points. In some of them, you wouldn't be able to score any victory points in the first turn, in some you would. In some of them, you scored more victory points towards the end of the battle, whether that was because you hold on, if you hold on to an objective for longer, you get more, or just it was worth as many points as, say, the number of the battle round. There are all sorts of very odd things like that which made it completely different. Now, there is a battle plan in the new one that also has victory points according to how long you've held it, but a fairly typical one now, because I always wished it was much more like in 40k, where you have these primaries for holding so many objectives, and there's a certain area domination aspect of it there, and then you had your secondaries. And then they sort of introduced some secondaries last year, the last year of 2nd edition, but they were a bit rubbish because they didn't really count for much. In fact, they didn't count for anything except in a tournament game, unless you drew. It was a tiebreaker. In that case, it wasn't worth the time considering what to take and trying to do them in the game, for what might have been a tie. Whereas now they've done it properly. You've in a typical battle plan now, you've got 3 main ways of scoring. Just like in 40k, where the Grand Tournament pack games, where you have if you have an objective, you get 5 points. If you have 2 objectives, you get 10 points. And if you've got more objectives, your opponent, you get 15. It's like that, but divided by 5. For most of the battle plans, you get a victory point if you hold an objective at the end of your turn. You get a 2nd victory point if you hold a 2nd objective. And you get a 3rd if you hold more than your opponent. And which is excellent. Then you have your battle tactics. At the start of each turn, you choose a battle tactic from a list. Now, I've talked about this in the past. We're using the General's Handbook ones, which are trickier because you can easily find yourself in a situation where you can't really do any. And this is what I really want to talk about. But for that, if you complete that at the end of your turn, you get 2 points. And then you've got your grand strategy, which you choose for your army before the game is ever played. And, a fairly safe one for a lot of armies will be the one where if there's any of your battle line left alive at the end of the game, you get 3 victory points. Your grand strategy is usually worth 3. Again, some battle plans change it around a bit, but that's typical. And I think that's a really good way to do it. But there is a sting in the tail, which we very much discussed. Although we played 3rd edition, we did a battle report of that a few weeks ago, and that was Soulblight Gravelords against Kharadron Overlords. In reality, we weren't really, because, I got beaten quite badly, and also it was very difficult for me to break out, and I'd chosen the army poorly as a result of it, I suppose, as well. very difficult for me to break out and actually challenge for the objectives. The battle plan and my army didn't help that. And also the fact I found myself very quickly in a position where there were no battle tactics I could choose. There were just none. So you have to consider that with the army building, the battle tactics now. Are you, because you want ideally 5 that you'd be able to do. But the game we had on Tuesday, it's a shame we'd not be able to show it because it was very good, but it was very long. And the reason it was very long is because there was a lot of consideration about, one reason it was very long is both of us had a lot to do in our hero phase, as well as other phases. Not so much the shooting phase, but there was a lot to do in the hero phase for both of us. There was a lot to do in the movement phase. There was a lot to do in the charge phase, the combat phase, the battle shock phase. And so the game went for a long time, but there was also a lot of time considering the appropriate battle tactic, because you could look at it and go, okay, well, I can do this one this turn, so I'll choose that. But what if you probably could also get that the next turn, but there's another one where this turn is the turn to get it. You're either going to get it here or you're not. So, for example, in one part of the battle, I looked at it, I thought, right, well, I'm going to destroy one of his battle line units. So I will take the one, which I forget the name of it, but allows me to, if I destroy one of his starting battle line units, then I get the battle tactic completed. But then I thought, but I could also get this one where I capture an objective, and it might be my last turn to do it, because if I then hold the objective for the rest of the game, I won't then be able to get that one, and I'm struggling on some of the others. So I chose to do the capture one, which I did complete, but held off on the battle line one. The problem was I inadvertently destroyed because they were all quite weak then. I should have left one alone. I inadvertently destroyed all of his battle line units, which meant I then didn't have that battle tactic to complete later in the game, and it was quite close, right? So it went down to the last battle round. And in that last battle round, I had no battle tactic. There was a battle tactic I could choose and theoretically could get, but it was hugely unlikely. The odds were massively stacked against me. So in other words, I didn't have a realistic one to choose. So because of that, because you have to not just consider which ones can I get this turn, but it's more like chess, you've got to think moves ahead. I don't want to waste one that might have come in useful later on that I'd be able to get in a turn or two. When actually, because if you've got a choice if you've only got one you can realistically do this turn, then okay, the choice makes itself. But if you're thinking, well, there's 2 or 3 I could get this turn, but come the next turn, does one of those suddenly become much more difficult, in which case I might as well do it this turn. And it does add a lot of time to it. There's quite a lot in 3rd edition Age of Sigmar, which I think makes the game really good in many ways, but take more time. And I do worry what it's going to be like for tournaments. It's something I'm not going to be able to experience for a while, the way things are going on our little Nurgle-infested island here. But I am thinking, they can already be a bit tight. And obviously you wouldn't be able to spend as long considering these things in a tournament as we were when we weren't so pressed for time. But I will be thinking, what if people do? And then the thing I hate most about tournaments, I don't actually hate many things about tournaments, otherwise I wouldn't want to do them. But the thing I do hate most is when people take a very long time over something, because then the game may not end. I don't like it when the game doesn't end. I want the game to end, to the point where it's established. If it went the full course, winning. It might end on battle round 3, as long as it's clear at that point someone has definitely won. What I don't want is a situation where if it could run longer, it might be a different winner. The game is still in the balance and then it ends because of time. I powerfully don't like that. Have to have a time in a tournament. And something like this, that's where the double-edged sword comes in. You then start to think, so is there maybe a better way around it? And I've said this before, the battle tactics in the core rule book are a bit more accessible, they're a bit better. I think the battle tactics in the General's Handbook are good, but maybe a downside is only being able to pick them once. Maybe what would be better is if you could either select them multiple times, or at the very least, if you are limited to only completing them once per battle. So let's say you, for example, try and you do the one where it's to destroy an enemy battle line unit. But let's say you don't quite achieve it. So you've missed your battle tactic, you've lost the points for that turn anyway. But let's say the next turn you go, well, I didn't actually achieve that battle tactic, so I can then select it again. So maybe that would be, and then maybe it wouldn't, the thinking in your head, because you could get to a situation where I'm probably going to destroy this battle line unit, but I might not. And if I choose it and I don't, and not only have I lost the points for that turn, but I potentially lose them for the next turn as well, because then in the next turn I definitely would destroy it, and there's not any other battle tactics I can think of. So I don't know, I'd be thinking about, if I was like Games Workshop, I'd be thinking at the moment, it's a really good system, and I wouldn't want to change the system. You know, the battle plans are now way better because of it. The actual way victory points are allocated, particularly with this now standard, and it's not exclusively the case. There's the odd battle plan where it's a bit different, but it's now fairly standard. You know, this idea of up to 3 victory points a turn for holding objectives. I say 2 for your battle tactic. Actually, for some of the battle tactics, if you complete it with a monster, you get an extra one because it's the realm of Gur this season. And actually, if you destroy monsters, you can get enemy monsters, you can get a victory point for that as well. So there's other little ways to get them as well, which is actually quite interesting, because it's like, again, monsters can be double-edged sword. You, by having monsters, give your and by monsters, monsters, you give your opponent a possibility of extra victory points if they destroy them, but at the same time you give yourself ones as well, because some of the battle tactics, if you complete it with a monster, you get the victory points. And in fact, one of the battle tactics, although you don't get more victory points for it, can only be completed with a monster. So again, it gives you that extra option. So monsters are very interesting. It's really trying to get you to take monsters. But that's an interesting double-edged sword. The one with the battle tactics is a much better system. It just takes longer to really consider things. And if you don't take that time, you run into the risk of regretting in the next turn the one you picked that turn. But those are my thoughts on that. It was an interesting game. I like these battle plans now. I haven't yet. Okay, there's a couple that I'm a bit wary of, and I haven't played those yet. When I do play them, I think, I don't like these. Maybe I think I'd prefer them a bit more standard. That they're all this 3 victory points for objectives up to 2 or 3 for battle tactics, and then 3 for your grand strategy. If that was like always the case, then I'd really like it. But as most of them are, yeah. But those are my thoughts on that anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've been playing a few 3rd edition, what do you think about that aspect of the game? And until next time, I'll see you later.